welcome you. We're excited you're here. Truly, we're grateful. And I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Ravi Chandra. Thank you,
Okay.
Ravi.
Thank you so much, Indra, and Allison as well for organizing this. Excuse me. And I'm so glad to see all of you and have you all join us for this first Contagious Compassion Zoom session by sponsored by the Asian Art Museum. And my name is Ravi Chandra. I'm a psychiatrist and writer, as Indra said, in San Francisco. I'm also the founder of SF Love Dojo, which is an organization to teach compassion and self-compassion classes. And you can find out more at sflovedojo.org and find out about future offerings. And first off, I just wanted to lead you in a little guided meditation. It'll be about 10 minutes long or so. So if you just want to find a position that'll be comfortable for you for about 10 minutes, and you can just relax in your chair or on your cushion, and or you can even be lying down if you'd like, as long as you can hear. And you just want to have your hands free, so you can you leave them in your laps or wherever is comfortable for you, but hopefully not holding your phone or device. And you can keep your eyes open or close them partially or fully and just listen to my voice. And first, just take a few deep cleansing breaths. So that's in through the nose, big inhale, and out through the mouth. And as you do this, as you exhale, again, just let the worries and tensions and anxieties of the day fall away. And just take another 3 or 4 deep cleansing breaths. You can inhale for 4 or 5 seconds, hold the breath, and then exhale. And then just relax into your natural breathing rhythm. You just want to focus your attention on your breath. And this is just the beginning of mindfulness, just paying attention, just noticing. I just want you to notice the cycle of the breath as it moves through your body. In through the nostrils, pushing out your chest, then your abdomen, and then back out again. And just allow yourself to be one with that cycle. And just notice that as you inhale, the air is cool, and as you exhale, it's warmed by your body. Inhale, cool, exhale, warm. And this is a way that you transform the breath every moment. Just like you, with your presence in the world, transform the world. You transform the world with your presence and action, just as you're transforming the temperature of your breath. Your mind may wander. You may notice thoughts and just gently notice them and let them go and return to that breath. Just feeling your body rocked by the waves of your breath. Gently rocked. Like the waves of the ocean, the gentle Pacific waves of the ocean. Just give yourself over to your breath. I'd like you to imagine that you could breathe directly into the center of your chest. And as you breathe in, the space around your heart relaxes. Just feel that imaginary breath filling your heart and chest, expanding it. And imagine breathing with your loving heart, just right with your heart. Gentle breaths. Guided by all the love and care you've received and been part of. Just allow yourself to breathe love from your heart. As you're gently rocked by the wave of love, riding with your breath. Each inhalation contains molecules that have been breathed by every living being on earth. You are connected to all of life. The plankton of 7 oceans breathes through you. You are breathed by the oceans and by the forests. Feel the love of that breath. Feel the seat beneath you and the ground below that. You are connected to the whole earth. Just feel the love and stability of the whole world present in you. As you breathe love from your loving heart. Allow every cell of your body to be filled with that breath and touch of love. Let every cell of your body feel your own love and tenderness. and feel your cells permeated with love. Now I want you to think back over the last few weeks and call to mind a difficult emotion or experience. Maybe not something that goes all the way up to 10, but something that's somewhere in the middle. A difficult moment of anxiety or frustration or grief. We're living through difficult times, so it's so normal to feel difficult emotions. Countless others have felt these difficult emotions, but I just want you to think about that emotion and try to name it. Anxiety, fear, worry, sadness, sorrow. Just want you to name that emotion or those emotions. And you get to your feelings honestly. And I want you to remember that your body is filled with love and you've breathed love. And I want you to treat yourself in this experience of difficulty with kindness. And just to be with that difficult emotion and that suffering with love. Be with your suffering with love. And just rest with this awareness. Now I just want you to gently let that meditation go and return your awareness to the breath and the mindfulness of the breath. And allow yourself to breathe gently and naturally. Just bringing yourself into this moment with all the intentions to learn and grow and heal, and to be a better witness and companion to yourself. Just breathe. And when you're ready, you can let that meditation go and return your awareness to the room that you're in, and also our common Zoom room here. Thank you all for joining us. There are about 60 people with us now. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes, and then we'll do some exercises with the whole group, and we'll have some time for larger group interactions as well, and questions and answers. Again, if anybody joined us late, my name is Dr. Ravi Chandra. I'm a psychiatrist and writer here in San Francisco, and I also run the San Francisco or SF Love Dojo. So we're all experiencing difficulty right now and distress. There's a lot of, we've kind of uncovered the uncertainty of life. We're dealing with illness and the loss of our usual activities. Some of us may have lost people we care about deeply, lost our loved ones. There's a lot of anxiety and grief and frustration. And the difficult time leads to difficult emotions. And we are sheltering in place still. And I think for me, I ask, how can I better shelter in mind? And how can I make my mind a shelter? How can we each make our minds more of a shelter for difficulty? And how can we take refuge in our own minds when our usual refuges may be a little unsteady? And I think self-compassion and compassion cultivation help us build that shelter so we can take refuge in the storm. And compassion and self-compassion help build the immune system, boost resilience, prevent burnout, build better relationships both with ourselves and with other people. And they, I think, really take us further along the path of interdependence, but also closer to and always cultivating our true identity, which I think our identities as human beings, as social beings, are dependent on relationship. A famous psychiatrist, John Bowlby, said there is no baby. There's always a baby and someone. We are born into relationships. I wrote, we are who happens to us and what we make of the happening. And I think, therefore, our relationships are so important. And so how we relate to ourselves and relate to others guides us and guides our growth. And so compassion and self-compassion really take us along that path. And I'm going to share some slides now. Mindful self-compassion is composed of 3 steps. And here you see this expanding brain where we're stuck inside with all our difficult emotions. And by cultivating these 3 steps of mindful self-compassion, we can really help ourselves with difficulties. And it's all about being a better friend to ourselves and really asking the question, how would I treat a dear friend going through distress? Because 78% of people treat other people better when they're suffering than they treat themselves. So mindful self-compassion helps to right that balance and help us treat ourselves just as well as we treat a friend or a loved one who's going through distress. So the first step of mindful self-compassion is mindfulness. And the definition of mindfulness is awareness of present experience with acceptance. And it's just noticing, naming, labeling what's happening internally, just observing. We have a saying, if you can name it, you can tame it. And so if you can name your emotions, and sometimes this needs practice to name what emotions we're having, you can work with it. And mindfulness is as opposed to jumping from the emotion into a story, a thought, a judgment, a criticism, etc. So our minds, difficult emotions especially, can run into all kinds of things. Our fears can cause us to future trip, for example. So mindfulness helps us just name the emotion and take care of it. That's the first step in taking care of that difficult emotion, is naming it. And then second is common humanity. Often when we have a difficult emotion, we feel isolated with it. And it just fills us. And we forget that all human beings have difficult emotions, that life involves a lot of suffering. No one gets through life without suffering, without loss. So generating that sense of a shared or common humanity helps keep us from being isolated, and is very important, the very important second step. And the third step is self-kindness. And through the course that I offer, and is offered online as well, through the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, there are so many techniques of generating self-kindness, at least 2 or 3 dozen techniques. But it's self-kindness as opposed to self-judgment or self-criticism. Just soothing oneself with the difficult emotion rather than saying, oh gosh, why did you foul up or why did you fail? Because the self-kindness helps us get us back on our feet. And actually, it's a great myth that self-criticism helps us achieve more. Actually, that's not true. The self-kindness and self-compassion help boost resilience, help pick us up after failures, and help us keep going. So one practice that I teach that I'll just go through briefly is the mindful self-compassion break. So it's composed of 3 parts, and each one of these is one of those parts. So with mindfulness, just to notice, this is a moment of suffering. So that's the first step. This is a moment of suffering. That's mindfulness. Or you could say, this hurts. Ouch. Just to notice it. The second, the common humanity, suffering is a part of life. Or I'm not alone with this suffering. Or others suffer with this too. So that's the second step. And the third step is self-kindness. At least in this moment of suffering, may I at least be kind to myself. So 3 steps then. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. And in this moment of suffering, may I at least be kind to myself. So those are the 3 steps. So that's called a mindful self-compassion break. So that's one tool I'd like to give you. And you can use that as a mantra or as a meditation practice. Then I'd also like to just mention that here's a kind of a simple diagram of our inner life. You can see in this circle all kinds of emotions. There's good emotions, joy, happiness, awe, but there are all kinds of difficult emotions like mistrust, confusion, despair, shame, fear, anxiety, hostility, and so forth. So these are all the kinds of emotions that can stir within us. And I think friendliness and compassion are an important ingredient to cultivate in the inner life. And I call friendliness and compassion the umami of our inner life. As you might know, umami is the 5th taste after sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and then there's umami. And umami makes every dish more tasty and delicious. It's kind of a tangy, savory kind of taste. But friendliness and compassion also makes the inner life and our relatedness more tasty and delicious. And it's something you can cultivate and you can grow. So hopefully this session and the ones to come will help you with that. And finally, I just wanted to talk about the stages of compassion. So that's 1, to notice the suffering. That's a mindfulness step. To develop a concern, a sympathy about the suffering, to develop some emotion about the suffering, of caring and concern. And 3rd, generating the desire to help. And 4th, taking actual action to relieve the suffering. And that could be either internally a mental action or it could be a physical, concrete action. And I think both are important. And you can cultivate every step on this. And I like to say this is like being on BART. A lot of us are not on BART right now, but if you can think about BART coming into the city from the East Bay, you stop, the train stops at the Embarcadero, you notice the suffering. You go to Montgomery Station, you develop concern for the suffering. You go to Powell Street, and you generate the desire to help. Then finally you get to Civic Center, and you decide to take action to relieve the suffering. So that's the cultivation of compassion helps you stay on the train to the destination point, all the way through to the point of taking some action, either mental or concrete, to change the suffering. Okay, and then this is just a little plug. All of these skills and many more are taught in my Mindful Self-Compassion class, which is, as you see on the screen, 8 weeks, 2.5 hours a week. It can also be done as smaller workshops or an intensive. There's also a compassion cultivation training program, which is also 8 weeks long. And these can be done online through the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, centerformsc.org, or thecompassioninstitute.com. So you can look at those websites to get online classes as well, or come to my website, sflovedojo.org. Now, I've given you a couple of techniques. Oh, there's one more technique which I'd like to share, which we started on during the opening meditation, and that's to just first notice a difficult emotion, but then after you notice the difficult emotion, to go a little deeper. and ask yourself, what need do I have that's not being met? For example, if I have anxiety about the current situation, I might have a need for safety or wellness that's not being met. If I'm feeling loss, maybe it's a need for love and a connection. But the important thing is going from that emotion to the deeper need and really validating that need and remembering that need, and to remember that our needs are not always perfectly met. Even in the best of situations, the best of relationships, our needs aren't always perfectly met. And we have to learn those self-compassion and compassion for others in order to help us tolerate the distress of not having our needs met. So I taught you the mindful self-compassion break. I taught you a little bit about compassion and about naming the needs, and we went through one meditation. And now what I'd like to do, it'll take me a moment, but what I'm going to do is have you join breakout groups. I think we'll be able to do 2 people in a room. Now, if anybody's, let me just check and see, if anybody's just on audio only, and if you're doing audio on one way and video through another device, what I'd like you to do is to just be on audio, because that'll help when we go to the breakout rooms. Otherwise, somebody will end up in a breakout room with somebody who does not have audio. So I just want you to use your audio device. And then what I'm going to do, you'll break out into groups of 2, and you'll have about a 15-minute discussion. And each of you will have half of the time, so about 7.5 minutes, and I'll send a message halfway through. And what you'll talk about is just, you'll choose who goes first, and that person will describe a difficult experience or emotion recently that's perhaps come up with this COVID crisis, and talk about the distress and the difficult emotions that came along with that, and name their need, and just talk about the distress. And the other person is just going to compassionately listen. You're not going to advise or try to change the person or anything. You're just going to compassionately listen and affirm and validate them as you need to. But the point is that no one needs to be fixed. We just need to be heard. And pain is relieved by hearing it, by the receiving of pain. So we just want to share. And so each person will have 7.5 minutes or so to do that, and you'll trade off. And then I'll give you a message when we're about ready to come back. So all right. So I wanted to introduce this final meditation, and some of you may have heard of it before. It's called Tonglen, or active compassion. Tonglen is a Buddhist meditation, and it literally means giving and receiving, or taking and sending. And metaphorically or imaginatively, it's a way to work with the compassion, with the suffering that we witness both within ourselves and in the world. So the key is to first connect to your compassionate source, and then we'll talk about, we'll use one particular visualization for taking in that suffering, whether it's the suffering of your own self, or a suffering of someone you care about, or the suffering of all beings more generally. And we usually visualize it like breathing in a dark cloud. And some people find that visualizing breathing in a dark cloud is too difficult. So you can switch it to maybe picking up someone's bags and taking away their burden. But in any case, if you can imagine that you breathe in a cloud of suffering, and then you visualize transforming the suffering where it meets the light of your heart. So that this visualization gives you something active to do with the suffering that you encounter in the world. And if you can just be present with suffering, not being the suffering, but being with it in an active way, that really helps us regain our stability and our ground. So this is something that I do regularly, and that you could do. And so this is the third meditation. So we talked about the mindful self-compassion break, also naming your difficult emotion and validating the underlying needs. And finally, this third one is the Tonglen, or active compassion, to deal with your own suffering or suffering more generally. And this is all basically to give you an active stance, to give you this active space to work with difficulty and suffering. So again, this meditation will probably last about 5 or 7 minutes. And so if you'd like to go ahead and put yourself on mute and just again settle into a comfortable position. That'll be comfortable for about 5 to 7 minutes or so. And just take those 3 to 5 deep cleansing breaths again. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And then just settle into your natural breathing rhythm. And just noticing if your thoughts wander and returning it to the breath. And again, noticing that natural way that you transform the breath from cooler to warmer. The natural way you transform the breath and the way your presence transforms the world around you. Just feel your kindness and tenderness and connect to that. You can visualize now someone who's compassionate or benevolent. Could be someone in your life, or it could even be an image from nature, like the ocean or a tree or the sun. Something that someone or something that you imagine has great compassion and that you associate with compassion. And just imagine that figure or object or person wishing you happiness. May you be free from suffering. May you be free of fear and anxiety. May you be well. You can imagine that figure generating light that touches you and fills you with compassion and tenderness. May you be free from fear and anxiety. May you be free of suffering. May you have peace and happiness. And allow that feeling to permeate you. Now I want you to just touch on or think about suffering. Maybe it's your own suffering. Maybe it's the suffering of your loved one. Maybe it's the suffering of people in your town or city or country or even the whole world. And just imagine the suffering as a dark cloud. And just breathe it in a little bit, just a little bit. And imagine that this dark cloud transforms when it touches a light at your heart. And when it transforms into light as it touches your heart, it takes away the suffering completely. And I just want you to use your imagination to transform the suffering within you. This is the mental act that I spoke about earlier, that fourth stage of compassion. Mentally transforming the suffering or wishing the suffering to be relieved completely. And now you can say to yourself or to the world or to anyone who's suffering in your mind, may you be free from suffering. May you be free from fear, pain, and anxiety. May you have happiness. And just keep silently repeating those phrases to yourself. And through you, as you transform that cloud, as you breathe it in a little at a time. Your breath is always with you, and you're always transforming your breath. And this active compassion practice can be there for you always too. You can call it to mind and practice with that suffering as you encounter it. Imagine that you're transforming it with your breath, breathing it in a little and transforming it to light and love and peace and happiness. May you be free from suffering. May you be free of pain, fear, and anxiety. May you have happiness. And with those warm thoughts and wishes, just gently return your attention to your breath. And you can just dedicate your intention that you've practiced this way for this time. Your intention of coming here to build your compassion, to care for yourself, to care for others. Just reflect on that and hold that. Let that intention fall gently to your heart. And that's who you are. And just return to your natural pace of breathing and your awareness of the breath. And when you're ready, you can release that meditation and return your awareness to the room. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was a short meditation. I forgot to ask before we started who all had experience with meditation, but I hope you got a little taste of it now. Okay. How do I prevent my mind from wandering during meditation? I try to focus on the breath, but I feel anxious at times. Um, yeah, again, I think this is natural. It's normal for the mind to wander, and the goal is not to have a completely still mind. It's great if that happens, especially if that gives you peace and calm. Um, but I think the idea is to just notice what's happening, and if you can just very often, if you bring awareness to what's happening, oh, here's my mind being busy, and just say that to yourself. Just label it, and then often the mind can let go of that pattern um, as you just label it and notice it. Other times you might develop other techniques or use other techniques from other meditation classes to investigate what you're feeling with kindness and with tenderness. So where is this coming from? And just to be able to hold that in this space of mindful awareness and kindness. So mindfulness creates spaciousness around difficulty, and the compassion creates warmth. And the warmth allows you to create more space. So the more you bring space and warmth to your experience, it changes it. And the whole idea is not is how to relate to those difficulties, whether it's a wandering mind or anxiety, in a way that's more fruitful for us. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so Indra, you can jump back in and yeah.
I was speaking and I was muted.
Oh,
I want to thank everyone so much for being on this in this session, being here for our first Thursday night online program, and thank you, Dr. Ravi Chandra. That was really nice to have this time to meditate and go inside and also share one-on-one with my chat room partner. It was really nice to connect. And please do, if you want to check out his website and his book, please check out the book through our online store, and come back next week. Our virtual reality developers, and we've got music coming up in a couple weeks, and a writing workshop, which will be great in May if you want to express your feelings in writing after you meditate. Great way to do it. So thank you all, and you'll get a survey from me and give us feedback. We really appreciate it.
thank you. Oh, someone asked a question about the breakout rooms. If you have a Zoom account and a pro account, you have to enable it in settings, and then punt as I did. Okay, so all right. Thank you so much. All right, take care.
Thank you.
All
Good
right.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank